$200,000 worth of student loan debt, and I'm pretty ashamed of it. I recently made a couple of videos on YouTube Shorts and all of my other platforms talking about my student loan debt, and so I decided to make this sit-down video because I wanted to delve more into this topic to provide more detail that this conversation requires. If you're new around here, my name is Kaisha Huguley. The internet knows me as Kaisha Creates. I am an actor, a multi-hyphenate artist, and creative living and working in New York City. With this recent loan forgiveness program from Biden and Harris, I've had a lot of mixed emotions about it. If I'm just being honest, I am glad that that campaign promise was fulfilled. I just am going to need a little bit more help, especially after seeing the White House Twitter. First of all, whoever is running the White House Twitter, chef's kiss, I love you. Like, genuinely, you are it. You are a star. Keep going. But I do have a couple of questions. If we are forgiving millions in PPP loans, can we forgive these student loans in full? Because honey, I just can't tell you how much sleep I have lost worrying about how I'm going to pay these loans. So let me go back. Let me start from the beginning of how I got into this situation in the first place. During my senior year of high school, I decided to go to college. I knew I would be going to college probably since I was 3 because that's what most people in my family do. And so going to college, going to grad school were things that were always on my radar. So when I went to college, I of course was looking for a scholarship. I didn't want to have to take out any loans. And lucky for me, I ended up earning a full scholarship from Mount St. Mary's University, and I was a part of the Third Century Scholar Program, which was an academic scholarship program. Although I was able to get my college paid for, I was not able to get my graduate school paid for. One of the reasons why I decided to go to graduate school is because in my senior year of college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had some things that I was interested in. I just didn't know what field to do said things in, and I was just really unsure. One thing that was also at the very forefront of my mind at the time was survival, stability, things that I feel that I didn't have in my youth that I wanted to provide for myself. And so money was important. I was like, I need to do something that's going to make some money because I have to take care of myself. And so having that pressure on top of the pressure of, oh, I need to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life, that's how I ended up in graduate school. Looking back, I remember this so vividly. I applied for 4 graduate programs and I was only accepted into 1. And I kind of took that as a sign that, yes, I should go to this one. But now looking back, I'm like, maybe the universe was trying to steer me away from the student loan debt that I ended up incurring. Nonetheless, I was accepted to George Mason University for a Master's of Arts Management program, and I decided to go to graduate school there. One of the things that was very much drilled into me was that if I wanted to secure my earning potential, that I needed to have a graduate degree. It was not an optional thing. It was like, yes, you need a master's degree so that you can be competitive in your field, so that you can justify your pay, negotiate salary, all of these things. And so going to graduate school felt like a no-brainer, but I wasn't able to get much of a scholarship. We might as well say I didn't get a scholarship to graduate school because I think every semester I got like $1,000, but that was it. So why arts management, you ask? One of the reasons why I chose arts management at the time is because at that time I had not found theater. I was not yet an actor. I hadn't even done a community theater show at the time, but I knew I loved the arts. I knew I loved to perform. And I'm like, well, if I get into the management side of the arts, maybe I'll make some money. Also at the time, I was working for the Office of Global Publishing Solutions at the U.S. Department of State. And I had my eyes on the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, which is a bureau that is dedicated to arts and culture. And so I'm like, if I get a degree in arts management, perhaps I can one day get a job in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. That's actually what ended up happening. I applied for a paid internship in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. I ended up working for the Office of International Visitors on the International Visitor Leadership Program, and I was able to eventually get a full-time position. Here's the caveat. In the paid internship program that I was in at the time, it was required that you were in school. And because of the timing that I got into that program, I just graduated college, I had finished my degree, and so I technically was no longer in school. And if I wanted to eventually convert into a full-time hire position, I needed to be in school school until that time came around. There was like a time period at the time that you had to honor. And so I was like, oh, let me make sure I'm in school so that I don't lose this job. It was really important for me to have a job. I don't think that a lot of people even recognize, you know, the circumstances into which people end up in these situations, but I could not move back home. If there was an emergency, I probably could have found someone to live with, but it was not my intention to move back home. I needed to be out on my own and have my own place, be able to take care of myself. This was not a situation where I could just move back in with my parents. Those are just not the circumstances that I had. I needed to figure out how to establish myself and to also secure myself financially. And so the answer at the time was go to school, get a master's degree. I will then be able to be successful and have higher earning potential. There are a couple of things that are slightly tragic about this whole situation for me. I managed to graduate college without any student debt, and I entered student debt when I decided to go to graduate school, and just that one decision could have eliminated a lot of the money that I signed up for. The second thing that is tragic is that I wasn't wrong. My earning potential is definitely drastically different than what I would earn if I only had a bachelor's degree. I know this for certain because of what I was able to negotiate in my position with the government. I would not have been eligible for certain grade levels had I not had that degree or not been working towards that degree. In my current position, I wouldn't have been able to negotiate my salary and to become a director had I not had a master's degree. Becoming a faculty member and teaching at various institutions, organizations, and what have you, if I didn't have a master's degree, I don't think those opportunities would have been the most available to me. Not to mention my race. I am a Black woman. It was drilled into me that if I wanted to be able to secure my earning potential and if I wanted to have a chance to compete with my white counterparts, that I would need this graduate degree in order to address pay inequity. Pay inequity is something that is out of my control and not my fault, but yet something that I had to take into consideration. So with that, I took out the loans to complete my graduate degree. I completed my graduate degree in a year and a half. I graduated with honors, and I did really well in the program. But let me jump back into where the rest of my loans came from. I graduated from graduate school in 2014. In 2017, I decided to go back to school to earn a certificate in musical theater. I wasn't really pressed on having, a degree or a piece of paper, from an institution for this. I low-key forgot what I was talking about. I had to jump away right quick and go get my cell phone because I thought, bro, it was calling. And I was like, Lord, the prayer has been answered. Anyway, getting the certificate was not about having this piece of paper. It was more so about getting a foundational training in musical theater because I was deciding to become a professional actor. And in order to accelerate my success, quote unquote, in the field, I wanted to get as much training as possible in a concentrated amount of time. And so I decided to go to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. I was able to complete my musical theater certificate in about just over a year and a half. And at the time, that was the best decision for me. But again, I incurred a good amount of student debt. So total, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have around $200K in student debt. And a lot of that is not even just from the amount that I took out, but a lot of that is from the interest that has accrued over time. Because I've had my graduate loan since 2014 and it is now 2022. You're probably wondering, Kaisha, why didn't you just pay them loans off? You should have been making payments. Luckily, I did make some payments. So I have made some payments to my federal loans. I'm currently paying on my private loans. I have been able to successfully pay off one of my private loans, thank goodness. But this loan forgiveness, the $20K that I'm personally eligible for is going to take me to 180. I still have quite a mountain of debt to tackle. And if I'm just being honest with you, it, keeps me up at night. I lose sleep about this. I feel so regretful. And it's been really hard reading comments saying things like, oh, well, you need to take responsibility. You knew what you signed up for, and all of these really harsh comments. And I do know that it is my responsibility. Ultimately, I did sign up for this debt, but I did not recognize the magnitude of what I was signing up for at the time. I was just trying to survive and to do what I thought was best to build a stable life for myself. Listen, I'm not even trying to hold you. I don't need anybody feeling sorry for me or anything like that. But just to let you know where I come from, listen, I grew up in the hood. When my parents had me, they weren't preparing for me. Some people, when they have kids, they, prepare funds for them to go to school and they're like planning for, their future and their lives. I didn't have none of that. My parents weren't planning for me. Most likely, I was just the result of a good time if I'm just keeping it a buck. So with that being said, there was no money set aside for me to go to school. So jumping back a bit to talk a little bit about earning potential, I was right. I have been able to negotiate really good salaries because of my academic experience and my professional experience, of course, as well. Between my full-time position and all of the freelance work that I do, I currently earn 6 figures. Now, anytime you hear someone say 6 figures, it's like, oh my God, you're making so much money. And the reality is that 6 figures is not as much money as you think it is when you have this kind of student loan debt, and if you have any kind of other bills and things of that nature. So just to put it in perspective, like, yes, I do earn a very good salary from the work that I do, but it is not as much money as you think. To put this in perspective, my current student loan payments for federal, which I do not have to pay on right now, it's going to be roughly $390 a month, and my private loans are currently $531-ish a month. And so if you combine those two, we're talking about, you know, $800 to $900 a month just for my student loan payment. So yes, I am a 6-figure earner, but if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to make my student loan payments. Not to mention, I live in New York City. I am an actor. So while I have a full-time job, I'm literally running myself ragged to ultimately make all of these things work. If I didn't have a full-time job, I would not be able to afford to just act, because most of the weekly minimums that non-equity actors are given at regional theaters across the country, there's no way I could survive off that. There is absolutely no way that I could survive. I wouldn't even be able to make one student loan payment off of most of those salaries. And so I'm out here making it work, but I'm also burned out. I make a ton of sacrifices in order to be an actor. And so that feels like a whole separate video, but I just want y'all to know the real. When I've talked to my financial advisor about my student loans, you know, she's really been working with me on mindset in terms of how I think about it. And it is really, really hard for me. I feel so much shame about the decisions that I've made. When I think about the bigger picture of it, right? I was making a decision to invest in myself, to bet on myself, to better myself, all of these things. And so I can't be mad at myself for wanting to invest in myself. However, I just wish I had found a savvier way to do it so that I didn't end up in so much student debt. And that, like, guilt for not knowing is something that literally is eating me alive. I can't believe I'm even making a video about this. I've talked a little bit about student loans on my Instagram stories and things of that nature here and there, but I've never made a sit down video about it because I was just so ashamed at how poor of a decision this was. Now, again, I do know that I made this decision with the best information I had at the time, and at the time I really did think this was the best decision for my life. There's nothing I can do about it now. I can't go back and, you know, erase it or make a different decision. All I can do is move forward and hope that I can put myself in a position where I can pay these loans back. So I am actively doing that right now. Because I used to work for the federal government and because I currently work for an academic institution, luckily I qualify for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And so it is my hope that if I am able to make all 120 qualifying payments, that then I will be forgiven of the rest of my federal loan amount. But that does not account for my private student loans, which I will have to pay back in full. There's no kind of forgiveness for that. So I gotta shell out the dollars for that. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that last year I was able to pay off one of my student loans in full. It was my Sallie Mae loan. I no longer owe Sallie Mae anything, and it was a really interesting experience because I called to pay my last payment. The representative that I spoke with said, "Congratulations on paying off your student loan," and it was just like a really nice moment. And while I was excited, I was still like inside cringing because I knew at the time how much money I still had left to pay. And so now that I've paid off one loan, I have proved to myself that I can do it. I just have to be super strategic as I continue to approach this debt-free journey. Speaking of debt-free journey, it is my goal to be completely debt-free. Luckily for me, the bulk of my debt is student loan debt. I don't have a lot of commercial debt. I don't have any credit card debt. I have a car, I have my student loan debt, and it is my goal to pay both of them off as soon as I can, like as soon as I can. So when I set rates for certain things, like when I work with brands or if I'm doing coaching or whatever, my rate is my rate because we got to pay these loans off. You hear me? I'm trying to be on somebody's yacht. I don't want to be working this hard for the rest of my life. I want to spend my time working on the things that I'm passionate about. I don't want to have to feel like, I gotta grind, I gotta hustle, I gotta grind like all the time just so that I can make sure everything is paid. Like, I don't mind working hard, but there's a difference between working hard and then just being chaotically busy. And right now I'm living in a season of chaotically busy. So that's the story of my student loan debt. If you can relate, comment below. I would love to hear your story. If you have paid off all of your loans, or if this loan forgiveness program is making it possible for you to pay your loans off, please comment that below, as well as celebrate those victories, because I'm trying to catch up with y'all. I'm trying to have this paid off. I don't want this to be a part of my story anymore, and so I'm just manifesting this in advance, that my student loans are going to be paid off. Period. End of story. It would mean a lot to me if you could hit the like button on this video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my future videos, and I will catch you on the next one.